Peggy, and it's Millcast number, I think, 41. I'm in Montpelier. Actually, Amanda and I are up in Montpelier for a little coaching, business coaching, which is great. But we wanted to take this opportunity to meet one of our wholesalers. Her name's Mary Margaret. I dropped off some yarn for her. And if you haven't been paying attention to the news, Montpelier got really hammered, like flooded hammered, around July 10th. And about 150 shops in the area went completely underwater, including Mary Margaret's. I want to just show you her window right here. Many of the stores featuring the, Vermont Strong. And you got to be pretty strong when you hear Mary Margaret's story. I want to take you inside. We're going to talk to Mary Margaret. Watch your step.
Hi.
All right, hi. I am on the second floor of Notions, a yarn shop still.
Yes.
And this is Mary Margaret, owner of Notions. And I'm sorry, I'm still getting weepy. You're probably done getting weepy.
Well, no, I was weepy this morning.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
It started to peter off, but yeah.
So tell me where we're sitting, and can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, so we're on the second floor of what up until about a month ago, a little more than a month ago, was my fabric and yarn shop in downtown Montpelier. And we had a flood on July 10th and 11th. So we had about 4 feet of water on the first floor. So we had, this second floor where we're sitting was our kind of classroom space. We did sewing classes and knitting classes and all of that. And then the first floor was our retail space. And we had about 4 feet of water in the shop.
In the shop.
Yeah.
And you have a basement.
There's a basement to the building. Thankfully, I do not use my basement.
Okay, but that's, so
But
obviously
that was full,
filled.
yes. So the basement was full plus 4 feet of water on the main level. And it was not great. It was the entire downtown. Was about that, like waist high water.
I walked around downtown, and it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's really hard to see. And it's like, I think the thing that I didn't realize before this happened, and it's clear to me from conversations with folks outside of the community that most people don't realize about the aftermath of a flood, is that it's not just like, oh, everything was wet.
1 second. I'm an amateur. I wanted to make sure the audio was on. I'm sorry.
It's not just like, oh, everything was wet and then the water goes away and everything dries out. It's contaminated flood water. So not only is it muddy, so it was like inches of mud on the street after the water went down, but it was also like level 3 flood water, which means it was contaminated with sewage and bacteria, and so it was like a toxic hazard.
Wow.
In addition to being very dirty and just muddy and mucky everywhere, it was not just it got wet and then it dries out. It's like such a bigger thing than that. So to see your town and your community like just like caked in mud, it was like every single storefront. I mean, I just came from a business association meeting, and something like 120 businesses in downtown Montpelier. Every single storefront is empty and
right.
like under construction and gutted. Yeah, it's scary.
Did you have any warning that this was going to happen?
I mean, there were like it had been storming all weekend. So the flood event was like a Monday into a Tuesday. I've been storming all weekend, and there were flash flood warnings, and we get flash flood warnings all the time. I've seen from so many people like, oh, I see those on my phone and I don't think twice about it, and I don't really either until now.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially I think living and working in the town, you sort of think of that as like a rural, like the dirt roads might wash out or something.
Yeah.
But like surely the town will be
right.
Okay. So they knew that flash flooding was a potential and that it was coming. And then on Monday, so Monday, July 10th, there were flood warnings and everything. And I think it was around 11 a.m. that they started saying, we are confident that there is going to be water in downtown Montpelier. Prepare for there to be water on the streets.
Okay.
The river is going to overflow. And that's the reason that there was a flood like this, is that we met almost all of the towns in Vermont. The town was built on the river. That was
Right.
the
A
source
river
of
town.
commerce
Right.
150 years ago. So I had to go get my kids early from school. We were asked to come get the kids.
Oh boy.
From daycare and from camp.
Right.
In summer there's
Yeah.
no school, but they were in childcare. So I wasn't here at the shop. I couldn't be here to help, but I had staff working that day. We were supposed to be open until 5.
Yeah.
They were saying 2.5 feet of water on the streets of downtown Montpelier and get
Oh
off
my
the
God.
roads by mid-afternoon.
Oh boy.
So I got
So
on-
was your staff scrambling to get
Yes.
things up?
Yes. So it's a very small shop. If you haven't visited, we usually have one person at a time. So my one person who is here, bless her heart, started moving things up.
Yep.
And then we have another staff member who, and I love my staff and I love living in a small town, that she just lives in walking distance and reached out and said, I heard that they're expecting water. Do you need help? And I said,
Right.
yes. Anne is there by herself. Can you go help her?
Right. Right.
So the two of them moved as much as they could up above that 2.5 foot mark. That was
Right.
all we had to go on.
Right.
We had been told 2.5 feet. So they got everything up above 2.5 feet, and then it was 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and she needed to drive home to Barrie, and they were saying get off the roads by mid-afternoon because
Right.
the roads could wash out. It could be
Yeah.
unsafe. So I had to tell her to leave.
Yeah.
We've sort of done the best we can.
Yeah.
2.5 feet became 4. So there were sort of 2 ways in which we got hit by the water being in the shop. One was getting more water than we expected. So we had
Right.
sort of a bottom layer that was actually okay because that's what we moved.
Right.
And then we had a top layer that was above the water line. But then we had this middle section where the water came higher than we had been told to prepare for.
Right.
And then additionally, so there's that piece of we got more water than we had thought we would. And
Yeah.
then also a lot of our fixtures, and this is again something that I didn't think about this aspect of a flood before it happened, is that wooden shelving floats.
Oh my gosh.
So some of
Oh.
our shelving was bolted to the wall, and that stuff didn't float away, but just got wet up to the water line.
Right.
But that was mostly fabric. Yarn was all, and every yarn shop in America has those wooden cubbies, right?
Yeah.
We all probably have the same ones from IKEA.
Right.
IKEA floats. So
I had not thought about that.
stuff, right? I didn't
Yeah.
either. So stuff that we worked so hard to move above the water line, they were putting it just on top, piling it up on, and then
Oh gosh.
it just all tipped over. When I came in, it was just all that, those shelves were just completely on the floor.
So sorry.
So, and then the cash register table is technically high enough that it was above that 2.5 feet. So they had just piled stuff on the table. The whole thing was just, it soaked and was falling over. So yeah, there was some stuff that we sort of tried to save, but didn't anticipate what a flood looks like.
Right.
So
I'm so sorry.
thank you.
Why? You've been through a terribly traumatic thing, but can I ask you to go even further back? Why a yarn shop? What made
Why
you
a
want
yarn
to?
shop?
What? I'm not going to even ask. Are you going to continue? We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But what had you thinking? Yeah, I want a yarn shop.
Well, so it's funny because it didn't start as a yarn shop. It started as a fabric shop.
Okay. All right. And you do. I've seen some
Conceptually,
yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah. So now it's about 50-50.
Okay.
It's fabric and yarn, about half and half. When I decided that I was going to open the shop, where it was coming from was I got the sewing bug in 2016, and there was not a good, there's quilt shops around.
Yep.
But I was really interested in making clothes, and there was nothing.
Huh.
There was Joann's, or I could drive up to Burlington, although the place that was there now is since closed. And I was like, well, someone should really do something about that.
Yeah, something. Yeah. And why not me? Yeah.
And then, like, over time, it became like, well, that actually sounds kind of fun. Maybe I could do something about that. And I was also a relatively new knitter at the time. But Yarn, the beloved yarn shop that was previously the knitting studio that was here in Montpelier for many years, was still open at the time that I was conceiving of the store. So it was like November 2019 November 2018 that I was like starting to put my plans in place. And Yarn was still in town. I had no interest in stepping on their toes.
Right.
I loved them. They taught me how to knit. But that January, they announced that they were moving to Waterbury. And so I was like, well, maybe it wouldn't be a total insult to them if I had like a little bit of yarn.
Sure.
Just a little.
Yeah.
And then it just like the market spoke for itself and demand exploded, and we kept adding more and more and more yarn. And then here we are where it's basically half and half a yarn and fabric store. But that's sort of where it came from. Like, it's almost like, speaking to a yarn person, it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that we didn't start as a yarn store. It was.
Hey, if you had told me I would be running a
accident.
fiber mill, 4 years ago, I'd be like, I don't think so. So yeah, things just happen.
Very, very happy, not accident, but like evolution of where we wound up going. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So
it's brave to take that jump. So can I ask, what was your day job before you started Fabric and Yarns?
Yeah, I was an archivist.
And
so
that is
I went to library school, and I worked in archives and special collections. So
wow.
Historical material. So I worked at Norwich University in the archives and special collections within the library there since I had moved to Vermont up until I quit and opened the store basically. And there was so much that I loved about that, but this sounded fun too.
Right.
And I was like, do I want to... my daughter was born in March of 2018, my older daughter, and I was sort of like, do I want to be like an office job mom, or do I want to be like a cool creative job mom and like have her grow up with that?
And maybe got a little bit of both, because there is the back office.
Right. Running a shop is more of a boring job than people.
I can say firsthand, it's not easy to start a new business.
Yeah.
And so to then have this horrific natural disaster strike, how are you doing, and are you gonna keep going? I mean,
I am gonna keep going.
Okay.
I've been better.
Yeah.
Is what I've been telling people. It's been a really interesting time, like within the Montpelier business community, of just like everyone is so raw and vulnerable, and it's almost like, living in a small town, you get used to kind of being like, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? Like, you don't want to totally like. It's not like we're all airing our laundry all the time, but we people are just like crying it's gotten better. It's gotten better, but there's still, every business meeting there's tears, and it's just like we're just like so I've gotten a lot more comfortable saying to a stranger on the street, like, yeah, you know what, I've been better. Like, it's not the greatest time,
but it sounds like you also took this disaster and have kind of looked for the sunny side to it. So tell me about what's new for you.
Yeah, so we're moving across the street, not far, nobody panic. But there happened to be a space available that was actually vacant before the flood, and I had toyed with the idea of moving, but had just decided that it wasn't the right time. It seemed like a really big lift to, when we were relatively new. We opened 4 years ago, so it hadn't even been that long. We were still sort of establishing ourselves as a brand and didn't want to confuse people by being in a new place, and it's expensive to move. I was going to need new fixtures and all of this. So I sort of like put that to bed, had decided it wasn't the right time. I was like, a space will be available when I'm ready. But definitely, like, long term, the vision was to be in a different space. And then after the flood, I was like, well, I'm building up from scratch anyway. So why not? It's sort of, it's been so like one day at a time. And it's, now I'm sort of able to think 2 weeks ahead, but like the first week, the first few days was like, I don't know how to get myself lunch, let alone, like, your brain shuts down in an emergency situation like that. So like, people were saying like, oh, that space is open, you know, it's an opportunity. And I was like, no.
Right.
I cannot. I'm like barely functioning out here, right? Like, how can I also take on moving the business?
Right.
But as time has gone on and things have started to clear up a little bit, it did become clear that it was a great opportunity. So we're doing it.
Wow. But you're doing it while you're still trying to heal.
Yes. So, and it's sort of, what's actually been nice is that I now have like a fun new thing to focus on.
Okay.
And get excited about.
Yeah.
Instead of, I mean, right before the lease for the new space like fell into place and it became official that we were going to do the move, I had sort of had to take a step back and not spend my time here physically in the shop anymore. I mean, I'm very lucky that we have this second floor space that's sort of been our command center, and I have, you know, my desk was untouched. I have a space where I can work, and so it's been nice in a sense that I can be present and that I have like a place to go to get out of my house and come focus on work. But it's just such a reminder of, and just sitting, you know, you saw the downstairs before we came up here, it's very much a construction zone. The linchpin was like, there's been like a long dragged out process with the subfloor. There's still like big gaps in the floor downstairs. So it's just like it's not a shop right now.
No.
It's not.
No.
It's barely a place to work. So I had sort of needed for my own sanity to step back from being physically here. It's just like kind of a depressing reminder of how much work there is left to do and how much work is not happening. But now I have like, I can like peek in across the street every few hours and see how the drywall is going, and like,
do I dare ask if you have in your mind a day that you think you'll be ready to open?
I have a goal.
Okay. Goals are good.
Yes. So I am participating in the All New England Shop Hop it's a quilt shop hop event, which runs all of September and all of October.
Okay.
And I would really, really love to be open on September 1st when Shop Hop starts.
Yeah, and Labor Day weekend.
In order to capture the Shop Hop customers and also Labor Day weekend.
Right.
Yes. I think that pretty much every business owner that I've talked to is in agreement that like mid-September would be ideal, because we're going to start to get the leaf peepers. We're going to start to get the fall tourists. And most of us cannot. I do like 40% of my annual revenue in the third quarter of the year. And that's pretty much the case for most of the downtown businesses. You know, some of the restaurants I'm sure have a different model than the retail, but we really need that fall and winter traffic. So if you're thinking of, you know, maybe doing a little leaf peeping, put Montpelier on your
definitely on your travel destination and support the town. And support Mary Margaret.
And we're doing our best, and not everything's going to be open all at the same time right away. You know, every business is just like a person and a family doing their best. And so it's going to not look like it used to for a while, but the folks that are, you know, busting their butts to be open as soon as possible, including, I mean, there are places that are already open. There are places that barely closed because they have like elevation up from street level, and they need people to be coming. Like we can't reopen if nobody's gonna come. So that's an important message too.
I have to ask, is there anything that the state can do to say, oh, this is what we're going to do with the water to prevent it from happening again?
That's $1 million question right now.
And it's probably more than $1 million.
Yeah, it's more like the $1 billion question,
probably.
Geez. I mean,
okay.
I truly have no idea. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, I was just in a Montpelier Business Association meeting that Becca Ballant came to and spoke to us. And
I don't know. And
she's the congresswoman.
Okay. Oh,
Vermont's
right. Yep.
Congresswoman.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And our congressional delegation, Becca and Bernie and Senator Peter Welch, they're all very aware of this.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I think that the state and local officials, like, this is the question that's on everyone's mind is,
Right.
like, how do we live in a world where this is going to keep happening?
Right.
And is there stuff that can be done? Because it's a river town, and
Right.
the river is, like, you can see it out
Yeah,
the window.
yeah. Now I crossed over to
Yeah, and if this is going to keep happening, how
Yeah.
many times can we ask the community to miraculously bounce
Right.
back?
Right.
So there's a need for funding and support now in order for businesses to reopen and for the downtown to heal. But then there's also that exact
Right.
question, and that's like, I think the Army Corps of Engineers has to get involved, but it's literally like we think it's up to the governor to call the Army Corps of Engineers. Like,
Okay.
that, like, our congressional delegation can't do it. Like,
Okay.
I totally know nothing about this, but
Okay.
this is just, I came from
Well,
a meeting and this is what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what's on something that's on a lot of people's minds for sure.
Yeah. It makes sense. In the meantime, September 1st, you got some running room.
Whew! My daughter starts kindergarten on August 30th.
Okay.
It's not ambitious at all.
All right. All right.
I have nothing else going on in my life.
Well, we wish you the very, very best.
Thank
and
you.
and thanks for letting us talk to you in the middle of what's really a tough time. But you have a silver lining
Yes.
to look forward to.
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's just great.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.